I'm from Mccollum Wellness.
There comes a time when we hear a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, it's time to lend a hand to find the greatest gift of all. People want to find a day. Doesn't matter. Somewhere soon we could change. We are the one.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Duncan Mccollum coming to you from KSCO, Mccollum Wellness Radio. Michael Jackson, we are the world. And you know what? It's a time for change, a time for us to come together as one and really try to figure out how to heal our country and heal the world, because we are the leaders of the world. And so we want to keep our style of life open and available to everybody out there. You know, as one thing that I wanted to talk about today is Mark Twain had one thing that he said that I really liked besides the coldest summer he ever, or winter he ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. But he had another saying, which he said there were two important things in life. And the first one is when you're born, and the second one is when you realize why. And that might happen a few times for us, or it's an epiphany kind of change, something that really sets you off and puts you in line with what you are supposed to be doing this lifetime, and or really kind of makes a point for you that you know you can use this tool to further your cause or your goal. And so I have a number of things I'm going to talk about today. Might get myself in trouble, but you know what? That wouldn't be the first time. So, you know, I would say the first time I ever really knew why I was here was when I got my first chiropractic adjustment, because I'd been in pain for 8 to 10 years after falling out of a tree and breaking my back. I was carried in to an office down the street, Dr. York's office, after being flat on my back for 3 weeks and not being able to move, eat, go to the bathroom or anything. And, you know, I was scared to death. I was like 20 years old. When Dr. York took an x-ray and asked me when I broke my back, said, I think I can help you, but if it doesn't work, these two guys that dragged you in here and carried you in are taking you to the hospital because I'm afraid you're gonna need surgery. When he did that first adjustment on my back, and that explosive feeling of the pressure coming off of my nerve, and I jumped up about to hit him, and realizing that I'd not been able to put my weight on my own feet for 3 weeks and suffered from back pain off and on for my whole, well, adolescent life up into adult. That was a moment I went, wow, this is something I've got to learn how to do. I was so blown away. Of course, I had my struggles, as you all know. Couldn't read, terrible student, had my own bout with pain medications that were trying to get me, you know, that I was trying to use to check out, you know, drop out of my society, drop out of my pain and all that kind of stuff. So, but that first chiropractic adjustment was when I realized why I was on this planet, because I knew that something had happened that nobody had had an answer to for me for 20 years of my life. And that one moment freed me up, and it was pretty amazing. And then it took me 7 or 8 years to be able to get through, you know, school so that I could actually start to help people. And that was one spot. I'm going to jump ahead to 2019, when my arm was so messed up that I couldn't even lift it off the side of my side. It was I'd been doing a lot of work on our ranch at the time, just, you know, digging post holes, all that kind of stuff, carrying cement, doing other outside activities, as well as having a pretty hefty load of patients that I treated. And if any of you have ever been to a chiropractor, you know, it's kind of like playing tackle football 8 hours a day for, well, for me at that point, it was 30 years. And it's pretty physical. So my arm, I couldn't move it. I was in so much pain and it had been a long time. I tried everything. I'd gone to Mexico and had PRP, you know, plasma rich platelets injected in there, and no help, no help. And then my friend, Dr. Dan Pompa's son, uh, jumped off a cliff 60 feet, missed the water, shattered both ankles, and shattered 3 bones in his thoracic spine. It's a very sad moment. I remember us as a group, you know, on a Zoom call trying to figure out what we could do for this guy because they wanted to put a steel cage around his back. And some guy showed up, a guy named Dr. Dan Diduro, and I've had him on the show 3 or 4 times, showed up with something called a soft wave machine. And by doing the soft wave machine on Daniel Pompa Jr., um, as well as everything else that we knew. Daniel wouldn't take any medication. He wanted to fast. He knew that the way to break down the body was to have the body consume its own bad cells by fasting. A autophagy would take place where the body's going around and eating that stuff. You know, when you look at an animal gets sick, it usually won't eat. It will go lie down somewhere until it gets well. So innately, we know how to do that, but you know, when we start to overthink it, we try to do all these things. And now we're living in a place where all these medications are presented to us to, quote, help us. But as I'll go into in a few minutes, realize that it's actually, well, you be the judge. And so that epiphany was that soft wave therapy machine got this kid walking in 4 weeks. He was 20, 21 years old, and he had 3 shattered vertebrae in his thoracic spine. I've seen the x-rays. It's terrible. They wanted to cut him up and put a steel cage around there. But the stem cell machine, soft wave therapy, tissue regenerative therapy, got him up and walking in 4 weeks. And then he was in Europe in 6 weeks because he'd already had a trip planned. So that was pretty amazing. And so I bought a machine. I had the first one in Northern California. Mine, there were less than 200 in the United States when I got one. I'm sure it's hovering about 700 now. The machine is phenomenal. It's changed so many people's lives. And, you know, we've had it for 5 years now, and it's pretty remarkable. So that was one of those moments that I knew that this was something that was going to change the trajectory of how I was going to be able to help people. So I got a machine, and it wasn't a cheap thing to do. And I put myself out on a limb based on my experience that I'm going to go out and get one of these and see what I can do to help other people. So that was the second moment in my career. The first one, of course, was getting my first adjustment, and then becoming a chiropractor, getting a soft wave therapy machine. Now there's another moment that has just occurred in the last week and a half, which is another transitional moment in my ability to help people. And I'm so blown away by this technology. It's been around since the 60s when Russia was working with it a lot. And, you know, it had been kind of in the background. And what it is it's laser therapy. Now, there's a lot of different types of lasers out there. People think the bigger the better, the bigger the better. These big class 4 lasers that actually you can't use them on a lot of tissue because they heat them up too much. And so I've kind of seen this be thrown around quite a bit. And you know, wasn't really sure what's light going to do, what's sound going to do. I mean, the tissue regenerative therapy machine was just sound coming 3,358 miles an hour through the head of this thing. It was called lithotripsy, and it would find damaged tissue and send a signal to the brain to go fix it again. That was pretty remarkable. Sound. All right. Now, this is light. And what I've learned by studying and I've spent many, many hours in the last couple of weeks just going through the literature. 3 o'clock in the morning, I was up. I was watching 3 or 4 seminars this morning and studying this stuff before I got on the air, which also made me decide to talk about this today, possibly prematurely for my office's ability to actually put it into practice to the degree that I know I want to. So, just hear what this is about and do some research on it yourself. But the kind of lasers and the photons that we're interested in are within the spectrum of light. Infrared you can't see. That wavelength you can't see, and on the other end you can't see it as well. So what we know is, just like sun touches a leaf and creates photosynthesis within that leaf and causes the whatever that substance is, I'll think of it in a minute, to be created, that will allow life to that plant. That's the same thing that happens with light, to the right spectrum of light to us or to anything. Just as the sun hits and causes photosynthesis in that plant, those different light frequencies do the same thing to us. And, for instance, we sit in the sun and we get sun, and what happens? That sun hits our skin, and in that skin, there's a process of photochemical, biochemical response that vitamin D is created. So this is pretty amazing. Also, think about the different, okay, so the different spectrums. There's violet, green, and then red. So red light lasers have been used for many, many, many decades. And when you do a low frequency, low intensity type of laser treatment, it doesn't damage the skin at all. It doesn't damage the tissue where the heavier ones would, but it actually causes a biochemical effect in the body, just like sunlight would. And so the wavelengths are very, very tiny. They go from about 450 nanometers and up to about 760 nanometers, which would be the visible light spectrum of violet, green, and red. And stick with me, hang with me here. I'm not going to get really technical, but I want you to understand a few things. There was a gentleman named Royal Rife, Dr. Royal Rife, back in the 20s, 100 years ago. You may or may not have heard of him, but the Rife machine. And he was working with frequencies back then, and he had amazing results with frequency about 100 years ago. But there was no profit to be made of it. It's about the time when Rockefeller was creating the oil industry, where he took it over and realized that you could make pharmaceuticals from the oils and make that profitable. So things like the Rife machine and stuff had to go underground because they just weren't available, and they were being suppressed, just like chiropractors were suppressed. In 1895, when the first adjustment was made, was actually, what's really interesting, it was the first year that X-rays were discovered and created. So chiropractic and X-rays are the same age. And what's interesting is chiropractors utilize the X-rays for spinal misalignments and dysfunction probably more than anybody. At least they did back then. D.D. Palmer, B.J. Palmer, they studied it to the nth degree to understand why structure could affect function if it was cutting off the communication system. So anyway, the new epiphany for me is that this light therapy is making huge changes. I was at a seminar a few weeks ago, about 3,000 chiropractors. We still couldn't screw in a light bulb amongst us, and that's a joke. But I'd been having some abdominal pain for a day or two, and it's really weird for me. It was like on the right side. There's intestines there. Couldn't understand. I hadn't eaten anything weird. And I ran into this person, Penny Sneed, who I talked to on the phone about this Erconia laser before, ERCHONIA. And out of all of the lasers out there, the medically inclined lasers, Erconia has 22 studies, double-blind studies that have been cleared by the FDA. There's 25 or 26 of them. 22 of them have been done on this particular laser that I now have for some amazing results. But here's what happens. There's something called the mitochondria. It's inside the cell. It's a power plant inside the cell. And the mitochondria is, like the carburetor in the car. Recently, you've probably heard the term mitochondria, and you've probably heard that all chronic disease is based on dysfunction of the mitochondria. And very interesting because all chronic inflammation, chronic disorders, autoimmune disease is all traced back to a dysfunctioning mitochondria. So what's really cool about this light, it actually functions at the mitochondrial level. So there's something called ATP, which you may or may not have heard of. And ATP is the fuel for the mitochondria to create energy. So it's like the gas for the carburetor to create energy in the car. The thing about creating ATP is there's 4 steps to make ATP. So ATP is the 5th step of something called the electron transport chain. Now, electrons, those going back to science, there's a nucleus and these little things spinning around called electrons. And in order for energy to be made, there has to be a transfer of an electron along 4 different pathways before it gets to the one to make ATP. Now, what's really crazy is they've known for probably 40 years that the red laser, the low intensity laser, actually helps this 4th step convert to ATP. So if you think about this, think about crude oil. There's a lot of steps to take crude oil to make gas that can be burned in the car. And sometimes you need super, sometimes you need regular, sometimes you need diesel, sometimes you need what have you, right? So that is what happens in the mitochondria when you get sugar in there, glucose, or ketones, which are burned fats. It gets in the mitochondria and it goes down 4 doors through the electron transport chain until ATP is made. Well, guess what? Red lasers, the right frequency, will actually turn the 4th door power up so you get more ATP. That's really cool. But they didn't realize that there was a door 1, 2, and 3. And now what we know is door 1 and 2 are turned on by violet lasers. Violet are the most highest energy frequency highest wavelength in the color spectrum. And so that would open door 1 and 2. So up until about 2 years ago, they were able to now open 1 and 2 and 4 to create energy in the mitochondria. Well, just recently they came out with green laser, which will open door number 3. So we now have the full spectrum of light to help create the energy to help the body heal. And the way that we're doing this is by affecting the actual energy production in the mitochondria. So I hope that wasn't too complex. It probably was. Tried to make it explain it as easy as I could. But so now I have these machines. And just like the TRT machine, they ain't cheap. And I'm working through some processes to understand how it works. The book is thick on all of the different things that it can handle. And now, because I'm a chiropractor, there's certain things that have already been approved and cleared by the FDA, like neck pain, back pain, leg pain, foot pain, shoulder pain, dysfunctions, things like that. And so this is pretty cool. The violet color, by the way, is an antimicrobial, which is also cool. And so we have these different lasers that are the violet red, the green violet, and I'm real excited about it. So to me, now I look at my office and go, what do we do here? Well, we use our hands to free up the nervous system, and we use sound through the TRT machine, and we use light through the lasers to actually get the body to heal. So this is so futuristic It's unbelievable because it's working so well. Now, one thing that the science, and this is all, you go to PubMed, which is the documentation of this for the government, and you can take a look at what happens when you take all of the the drugs that you buy over the counter for inflammation, all those different things that the NSAIDs, whatever they're called, they all can help with the symptoms at the detriment of the mitochondria. So even though we know the mitochondria is what we need to build up to heal the body, all those pain meds that people are told to take actually are destroying the power of the mitochondria by blocking the electron transport chain, or whatever the effect is that they're doing to it. And you take those for long term, and it's just going to make you age quicker and quicker and quicker. So and you look on the bottle and it says, don't take longer than 15 days. If you take it longer than 15 days, check with your physician. You go to the physician, he goes, oh yeah, take that. So one thing that's really interesting, and I'm going to kind of spill over into a reason I decided to talk about this today, is we know that the mitochondria is the basis for almost all disease, chronic dysfunctioning mitochondria. And that can happen from toxicity, all the forever chemicals, glyphosate, heavy metals, molds, all the stuff we get off of our food, the poisons that are our food. The United States is the most obese country in the industrialized world. We're now, I've heard today that we're rated 79th in the world for health. And I'm excited to talk about a gentleman that I've actually had the pleasure of sitting down with several years ago with Dr. Dan Pompa, who you've heard me talk about forever. And this is a gentleman who I want you to just hear what I have to say, Bobby Kennedy Jr. And I highly recommend that you listen to his speech where he's saying that he is withdrawing his presidency and why he's doing it. When I sat down, or I was privy to the conversation with the rest of the Dr. Pompa Platinums, it's been 5 or 6, 7 years ago. He was talking about some information. I won't go into that right now, but he was so deeply entrenched in what was going on with the Food and Drug Administration, and how the regulating committees are actually the people on the board are actually people that have stock in or work for the very companies that are supposed to regulate, the FDA, CDC, all that kind of stuff. And he had found out why our children were becoming so sick. Right now, when I was a kid, autism was 1 in 15,000. Now it's in California, 1 in 20. So pretty crazy, and obesity, there was almost no kids obese when I was a kid. And now we're 50% of the children are considered obese. 50% of them have chronic inflammation, and it's all at a mitochondrial level, by the way, but induced by toxins inside the cell. Heavy metals, molds come down 4 generations, forever chemicals, all that kind of stuff. So this is what Bobby was talking about today. And he's 70 years old, and he's the guy that cleaned up the Hudson River. You may or may not know much about him, other than he's the son of Robert Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1968, or when that, I believe that was the year, and of course his brother JFK was assassinated 62 or 3. And you have to take a look at, he is now throwing he went to both parties, and he said, I want to clean up the healthcare of our country. I'm tired of the drug companies regulating and poisoning the kids, and doing, just making profits after profit at the expense of us when they're supposed to be protecting us. And I'm going to go in and clean them up. He's been working on this for years. He's been wanting to do this for years, and he hadn't had a platform. That's why he ran for president, because he's tired of the children our children being poisoned and losing their ability to function due to this dis-ease. And it happens so insidiously that parents don't even understand or know why. And it's really, really cool that that is still his goal. He says, look, I'm 70. I've gone to both President Trump and I've gone to Vice President Kamala and said, I want to handle this problem. This is my purpose in life. I want to handle this problem. And Kamala would not sit down with him. And not only that, of course, you know that he wasn't even allowed to run in the Democratic primary. They just said, nope, nobody's going to run. And now we have Kamala here with no votes and no platform. And now, so he went to talk to Trump and he said, this is what I want to do. And Trump feels so strong about the children and so strong about making us healthy that he and him had a few conversations. You should just go listen to Robert Kennedy Jr.'s talk in Arizona Friday about his beliefs, and it blew me away. I listened to it. I was crying at one point because of what he was going over that nobody was willing to talk about. And you realize that there's a couple things here. There's a saying that we've all heard, which is stand for something or fall for everything, right? So you got to make a stand, and he's making a stand. And because the people on the one side wouldn't even listen to him, and our country's getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and the other side will listen. He goes, I'm throwing my support to the ones that will listen in hopes that they're going to let me get in there and clean up all of this waste in all of this corruption in the medical fields and the drug pharmaceutical companies that go all the way back to Rockefeller, by the way. It just didn't happen. It's been slowly, insidiously creating this problem. But one thing that Bobby Kennedy said that I really enjoyed hearing was he goes, this disease is all coming from the mitochondria. And the mitochondria being sick is where all this chronic disease comes. At a cellular level, these bad genes are getting turned on because there's no energy in the cell. The mitochondria is wearing out. And so when you have a weak system, things turn on, bad genes turn on. And for him to say that, I went, wow, this he knows his stuff. He understands that the mitochondria is important. And here I am right now I've been working to detox bodies for, my whole career. And, it's not been easy because there wasn't a lot of real good science known about it. But the science now is so almost exacting when, you work with Dr. Dan Pompa and you understand, the cellular detox, the importance of the deadly, we used to call it the deadly trio, but now there's really, it's not just the trio, there's a fourth factor, and that's chemical toxicity. So it's heavy metals that we get 4 generations down through mom's umbilical blood, molds that are everywhere, especially in Santa Cruz, and hidden infections. And these can be in the jaw, in your organs. You all probably heard about me talking about my appendix rupturing, and I'd been suffering for 6 or 8 weeks with severe sciatica, thinking it was my back. It was the appendix. Once it ruptured, the pain went away. So those are the 3. And then the 4th is the chemicals, forever chemicals, glyphosate that drives this stuff deeper in the cell. So the cool thing is that Bobby Kennedy's goal, and this is what he wanted to do 7 years ago when I heard him talking with Dr. Pompa, and we were there listening and, being very respectful of his time. But, he knew that there was something dramatically needed to change. The trajectory of the healthcare in our country needed to change because we're the sickest country in the industrialized world. So pretty cool. And so I really recommend, for whatever reason, go listen to him talk. Listen to what happened to him. Listen to him talk about his his father and his uncle and what they stood for and where he sees things now. It's so important because, again, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. And that reminds me, on my way in, I was thinking of another saying that we've heard before. And now, character, when you look at character, we all have personalities. And, from some of my patients are from the Bronx. Some of them are from LA. Some, they're from all over the world. Some are foreigners who live here now. They all have grown up differently, and but the purpose and the goal and the sacrifice that people make to try to help people for their cause is very important. So I played the song "We Are the World" by Michael Jackson because, it is up to us, and we really got to just get the blinders off and look to see what's going on, right? So, you know, um, another tragedy we had back in the 1968, I believe, was Martin Luther King. He was another one that was killed by the same deep state that everybody else was. If I think, that's my thoughts. I don't know about y'all, but he said something that was interesting. He said, don't judge somebody by the color of their skin, judge them by the content of their character. Okay? So don't judge somebody for the color of their skin, judge them by the content of their character. Now, I know I'm probably not making people happy here, but if you don't stand for something, you fall for everything. I haven't heard anything that somebody's been talking about. No stance, just popular because of who knows what. Our country and the world cannot have this anymore. We have to get healthy. We've got to get the country back in order. We've got to get our children healthy. In another few years, it's going to be 1 out of 2. I think by 2050, 1 out of 2 kids are going to have autism if we don't change the way we're taking care of health in this country. So go listen to Robert Kennedy. He has the facts. This guy is really entrenched in this, and he's going to do everything he can. He said, look, I'm 70. One side didn't want me. 8 years from now, I'll be 80. I'm not going to be able to make a choice. It's a 78. I won't be able to make a choice, and I won't have it in me. Right now is my time to make a difference in the world. And we need to get the health of this country together because, it's the current system isn't working. 50% of us, 60% of us are diabetic or pre-diabetic. The thyroid, 30 million Americans have been diagnosed with thyroid disorder. That means there's usually twice that many that haven't been diagnosed. 25 million Americans have been diagnosed with peripheral neuropathy, which, we're very successfully treating. If 25 million have been diagnosed with peripheral neuropathy, how many don't even know why their feet are numb? Why they have to stomp in the morning or feel like they don't want the blanket on their feet, And now I'm going to tell you something. The red light laser is amazing for peripheral neuropathy. Not only the red, the violet and the green. In fact, the green, the studies that have come out that the FDA, even though I talked about them earlier, the fact that they've at least said, yeah, this double-blind study is working, and it's showing 30% efficacy, how do you say that word? 30% efficacy, that these lasers are changing the pain levels of these patients, or changing the condition. So, I can feel good. And it's with the Erconia lasers, which is the ones that I have that are getting these. Now, there's some other laser companies. There are different class of lasers that are taking that research and going, yeah, see, it works, but they're too strong. You can't use them on the brainstem because they heat up tissue and they can actually kill brain cells if it's too hot. You don't heat things up. It's great for heating up joints, things like that. But the cool thing about the what we call neuroplasty. It means nerves can be regrown, and they have been shown to regrow, especially with the peripheral neuropathy stuff we're doing at our office. But also there are studies. You can look at PubMed for this. That's the gold standard on the violet laser actually helping create neurons in the brain. So they now know that some neurons can be regrown and resynthesized in the brain. That's pretty cool because some of the conditions, the neurodegenerative conditions out there, are destroying our seniors. They're destroying their life. They've worked their whole life to be able to, enjoy their golden years. and their golden years are dimmed because of the way our healthcare system has been put together by the powers that be. And if we don't change it, if we don't change it, and we have a chance with Bobby Kennedy having some power here, he's given his whole life to learn how to do this and to make things happen. He's the guy that when the Hudson River fish wouldn't even swim in it, that was so toxic, and he found out about that, and he was an attorney. He was able to create the necessary effects on turning that around, and the Hudson River is now clean, and he's gone on to work with a lot of other environmental things. Now he wants to work on the environment of the inside of our children. Our children need this. You may not need it, your brothers and sisters and parents, it might be too late for all of us, but I don't think it is, because I know I see it change quite rapidly, and it takes time and money and effort. And people come into my office, and the one thing I say is, look, this is going to take effort and a commitment, and it's going to cost some money. It's going to take, this is not something that just fell off a tree, fell off of a coconut tree. So it's going to be important for us to really understand the trajectory of our country right now, for your family and your health. So that's my spiel. When I've always followed Bobby Kennedy, and I really appreciate, and he may be who he is, and I hear people say, I can't stand him, and blah 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 blah. Well, you know what? That's great. But what is he going to do? What's somebody else doing? What is his commitment? And you listen to that guy talk, and you're going to go, wow, this guy really knows what he's talking about. You'll probably not even have a clue on half the stuff he's saying, because you probably haven't paid attention. For those of you that have, awesome. Don't let me invalidate you. But the rest of us, it's time for us to not be spectators, because spectators never win. If we're going to sit back and just kind of watch what's happening without really engaging, then we deserve what we get. So do your research, open your eyes, and you might do everything and go, wow, that guy's really crazy on the air, and so be it. Do your thing. Do what you want, what you need to do to stand up and make a difference. And I played Michael Jackson on the way in today. We are the world, because and all those little kids singing, and it was just so heartwarming and heartfelt when that happened, and when that song came out so many years ago. And where's that innocence going? Over 50% of the children have chronic disease now. They have autoimmune disease. Where'd that come from? It's not genetics. It didn't just happen to come out of a gene, because if it did, it would have been 100 years ago, 50 years ago. But it's continuing to evolve, because the toxins inside the cell are depleting the energy of the mitochondria. The toxins around the cell wall are so stiff with rigid, terrible oils that don't allow the permeability of nutrition into the cells, hormones into the cells. These cells are starving to death. You have 75 trillion manufacturing plants in your body that need to function correctly. When they start functioning incorrectly, things die. The mitochondria starts to die. Then all of a sudden, there's this blockchain called the DNA, full of genes. These genes start to they're like a book in a library shelf. You pull out a book and you read it, and it says, oh, this is the Alzheimer's gene. You open it up and read it. Well, when a gene gets expressed, that's when disease occurs. That book could stay on the shelf for the whole lifetime of somebody, because it never got pulled out, because the body was healthy on the inside and the cells were healthy. So sometimes people come in and they go, well, how long do I have to do this? Well, what? How long do you want to stay healthy? How long do you want to work to being healthy? It's no magic pill. We tried those magic pills, the magic bullet, since penicillin was discovered. But that magic pill is no longer the magic we think it is. You need to put more and more together. And what do we know now? They're destroying the energy in the mitochondria rather than they might cover up your symptoms. And I've said this before, and Bobby Kennedy said it today as well. So the guy knows what he's talking about. There's $4 trillion spent in the United States on healthcare every year in this country, 4 trillion. That's 4 times the national budget for the military, 4 times that. And over 70 to 80% of that is all spent on covering up symptoms, destroying mitochondria. So, if you spend $3 trillion trying to destroy the mitochondria in people while you cover up symptoms, do you think you're going to get healthier or sicker? Healthier or sicker? That's why we're getting sick, because we're shooting at the wrong target, right? I remember that Lost Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? They were trying to find the Ark, and they were digging, and there were the Germans were there, and everybody was looking for this Ark, and there was this one. I can't remember what his nationality was. He was the guy with the monkey on his back, and they were digging, trying to find the Ark, the Ark of the Holy Covenant. I mean, the most amazing thing that you could ever find. And they were digging and digging, and people were getting killed and shot and fights and all this stuff. And then somebody realized they did some kind of calculation of where the actual thing was buried. And he said, "We're digging in the wrong hole. We're digging in the wrong spot." So you can dig and dig and dig in the wrong spot and never hit what you want. You can continue down this path of this trajectory of the Western medicine in the United States and the big farm, what they're doing. You can continue to do that, but you're digging in the wrong spot. The Holy Grail is over here. The body has the power to heal itself. All we need to do is get out of its way and clean it up so that the body can heal itself. So we need somebody at the helm of healthcare in this country that can do that. I believe Bobby Kennedy his integrity is there, and I believe that he can do it if he's given the reins. Somebody's giving him the reins. What's more important than our children? The way that they think about somebody, the way somebody talks, what have you. It's the content of the character, not the color of their skin or the way that they talk, okay? So look for values, look for promises, look for track records, okay? That's what I want to do, because I love treating people. I love helping people get well. When we have people walk up crying, just the other day, I did a laser treatment on a patient. I've only had this thing for a week. And one lady came up and we worked on her foot, and she was going, "I can walk on my foot." She was in her 60s, late 60s, like me. And she just was gleeful. She goes, "I don't have pain in my foot." One treatment. Now, that's going to need a lot more than one treatment to stabilize it. But the fact that light alone could do the same thing as photosynthesis on the sun on a leaf. The sun hits a leaf and creates a biochemical response that causes the tree to grow. Sun alone and water, right? And of course, the nutrients in the ground. So we have these lights that are in the visible spectrum, red, green, and violet, all different frequencies, all different wavelengths, that we know when they touch your skin, they actually create stuff. They actually affect the mitochondria. They've proven it, and it's FDA. You can go to the FDA website and look at these studies, double-blind studies. What's really cool, and this is one thing I really love about this, is you've got free-floating mitochondria floating around in your bloodstream all the time. So, we have the mitochondria in the cell. When we put these photons on there, when you put a photon, it's just a thing of light on an atom, an electron jumps to a higher orbit. And then when it jumps to a higher orbit, there's more energy in that cell. And then that electron can jump to the next cell, and that's excited and jump to the next and to the next. So those 4 things create ATP, which I was talking about earlier. But so you put the light somewhere on a body, whatever you're treating. But since blood circulates through that body part 4 times a minute, the same red blood cell is going to go through the same shoulder or the same pinky. It circulates 4 to 5 times a minute. free-floating mitochondria in your bloodstream is going to get turned on by these uh, photons as they travel by. The red, the violet, and the green are going to hit these mitochondria and electrify them. Those mitochondria are going to float around the body and find themselves somewhere. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm very excited about it. I still got a lot of work to do on it. I'm very limited in what I'm doing right now. But I can tell you this. We talk about what I mentioned earlier, what Mark Twain said is there's two important parts of your life, the day you were born and then the time you realize why you're here. Well, again, professionally, of course, I have my kids. That's why I was here. But professionally, you know, when I was born, professionally, when I became a chiropractic, first chiropractic adjustment, the first TRT treatment when I could lift my arm off my side for the first time in about 8 weeks without pain. And then just the other day, when I had my first laser treatment with the Zirconia, all three spectrums of light and my gut pain went away. And it was bizarre. So, you know, I'm probably on the fringe, but I really believe that, you know, we've been digging in the wrong hole, as that guy said in Raiders of the Lost Ark. The treasure's over here. It's not in a bucket of drugs that are killing us. I'm not a medical doctor. Don't stop taking any drugs that you've been prescribed, but you may want to kind of start to educate yourself and see what else you can do. Because if you are in a sinking ship and your body's sinking, your body is health that's sinking, and you're having to bail that ship out with a bucket so it doesn't sink while you figure out how to plug the hole, then those medications that you're now taking are like bailing out that body to keep it afloat until you figure out how to really get it well. Medications and drugs probably originally and herbs and all this stuff are still used kind of the same. I'm going to take this herb to keep my body healthy. I'm going to take this drug to mitigate the symptoms so I can do my life. Take this herb so I can mitigate my symptoms so I can go do my life. But if you just keep doing the same thing and not finding the root cause of the problem, the upstream cause is what we call it, usually the brain, mitochondria in the brain, the neurons, heavy metals, molds, hidden infections, and the chemicals that I talked about, forever chemicals and glyphosate, you're barking up the wrong tree. So, you know, there's just so much more we can do right now. But you're taking those medications, you got to talk to your doctor and go, Doc, I need to do something different. Or if you're happy with them, be happy with them. But we have had no real way out. It's like, you know, I've given the example before of a bunch of fleas in a jar with a lid on it. And you keep jumping and jumping and jumping and jumping as a flea going, I want to get out of this jar. I want to get out of this jar. And you keep hitting your head on the jar. Pretty soon somebody takes the lid off the jar and you've been trained to not jump any higher than the lid. So you don't jump any higher. I'm saying don't be a flea, jump higher. There's so much more out there now. That drug system that we've been in has a limit to what it can do to improve your health. It can stop your symptoms, maybe, or mitigate them. But as Bobby Kennedy was saying, you know, somebody takes a drug for autism, like a Ritalin. I think there's 500,000 kids on Ritalin or Adderall now. All these different things that they're giving these kids who haven't had the chance to try to get their body functioning well. They all have mitochondrial disorders. You know, they're depleted the energy they need for their body to sustain life at a cellular level, 75 trillion cells. So you can drug that symptom. And as Jason Fung says, the nephrologist that wrote the book Obesity Code, he said, as well as many other books, he goes, you know, if you could give a drug, make a drug that didn't cure anybody and didn't kill anybody, how long would you have to be on that drug? Forever. Then he goes, well, how many of them could you make? Thus, we have $4.3 trillion spent on healthcare in this country. No other country is as sick of us as us. No other country has we're 4% of the world population. We take 70% of all the drugs made in the world. So we have a chance to change the trajectory of our health, you know, and if we don't do it now, it's over. You know, there's just no chance. So listen to what Robert Kennedy says. You may or may not like him. I don't care if you like him or not. You know, you don't have to like somebody. When I worked at Sears Automotive I worked at Sears Automotive here when I was 21. I got a job as a tire buster. And, you know, I was a dumb kid, you know, on a lot of drugs to try to help my pain. And I had a broken back, right? And I'm working as a tire buster. And I'm working and working, and I'm just bent over in so much pain, not smart enough to quit. And this guy, I was putting tires on his 1964 Lincoln Continental with the suicide doors. And those were LR 7815 tires, the biggest domestic tire you could get. And I was bending over, putting it on, getting the tires balanced, trying to put it on this car. And this old guy walks up to me and he goes, and he was 84 years old. I remember him. He goes, "Son, you got a bad back. You better get out of this business." And I went, "No kidding." I do have a bad back. I'm getting out of here. So I went and I quit that day. But my boss said, "Okay, we're just going to put you in sales." And I went, "This dude, I don't talk to people. I'm pain medicated all the time, smoking dope. So I don't, my eyes are red." I didn't tell him that. I was thinking that. And he goes, "No, go ahead. You're going to start selling tires." So I did that for about 6, 7 years. Very successful. I was the best at selling Michelin tires than anybody in all of the Sears stores in the whole area. And just a young kid doing that. But I didn't like it. I didn't like working there, and I didn't like doing that. Forgetting my point now on that particular story. But I think I got carried away with my low back pain being gone now. You know, it's been gone for so long. My back looks so bad on an x-ray. Sometimes I have to show it to patients who have really bad x-rays. And I show them my back and go, "Look, your back is not as bad as mine, and I can do anything I want. But I'm smart enough. I don't dig post holes. You know, I draw the line at digging post holes because I know, you know, there's certain things that I just can't do. And I enjoy my life too much. So when you take a look at what Bobby Kennedy's talking about, take a look at where you think this world's going to be, where this country is going to be if we don't stop the drug invasion, the drugging of our children, the drugging of you, the drugging of, you know, our society, and make your decision based on that. Look at the content of the character. What kind of character? Judge people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. I really think that Martin Luther King meant what he says, and he said what he meant. So it's time to all of us to look up and figure out where we're going to go and how we're going to do it. So for any of you that may not have appreciated my show today, you know, that's okay. I'm glad you listen. But, you know, we all have to make a stand. You don't stand for something, you fall for everything. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of the weekend. And I want to go out with Michael Jackson talking about the reason I'm talking about this show, and that's the kids. Thank you. We'll see you next week.